This video is about Jesus as the express image of God. I've been a Bible student for over 30 years and a manufacturing jeweler for the same length of time. Now that might seem like an odd combination of things to state at the beginning of a Bible talk, but hopefully by the end of this short video, you will see how the manufacture of jewelry helps us to understand how it is that Jesus is the express image of God, how Jesus shows what God is like, but he is not God. Remember to subscribe to the Gospel Online YouTube channel and press the notification button. The phrase that I've quoted there comes from the book of Hebrews and the first chapter. And there on the screen we have the first 3 verses from the King James Authorized Version. There's told us there, I won't read the whole thing, you can read faster than me, that God spoke to us by his Son, the express image of his person, the express image of God. And it's that phrase, express image, that we're going to consider for a short while just now. It is a single Greek word for which there is no single or double English equivalent. The Greek is there on the left-hand side. In the middle of the screen, you've got, at the start of verse 3, that word, a character, translated there, the representation. In my concordance, Young's, it gives a translation of impressed image. And on the screen there again, various other translations and how it is their translators have chosen to translate that Greek word as exact imprint, exact representation, very character, or very image. But as I say, because there is no like-for-like English word to this Greek word, and this is the only occurrence in the Bible, this Greek word, so normally we'd go to other places to compare usage, but we can't do that. This is where a greater understanding of what is behind the word, I think, might help. So the Greek word refers more to than just character. We might say, oh, Jimmy is a great character. It's not just about a person's character. It refers to a process, the act of stamping or embossing. The physical object that makes the impression, the act of striking, and the thing that's struck. So all 3 of those elements are encompassed in this one word. That one word, character, embodies the whole process from the original to the act of copying to the express image, the copy of the original. And this is why jewelry making actually, and hopefully you find this interesting, gives a very good explanation of it. So say you happen to have this item as jewelry, it's a thistle brooch, and it is your copyright, or you have the permission of the copyright owner and you want to make a copy of it. The first thing you would do is to put the brooch into a mold. Here we have examples of 2 molds with different items than that brooch in them. These ones are 9-inch rubber molds, and another blank mold goes on top of that. So the items are sandwiched, if you like, between 2 slivers of rubber. And those rubber molds are then put into this machine, which is called a vulcanizer. And by the use of both heat and pressure, the items that are sandwiched in the middle then make an exact impression into the mold in which they're being vulcanized. So to use this example again of the brooch, this is the mold that resulted from that vulcanization. So you'll see it's in 2 parts, a bottom and a top, and both parts together is what makes the whole item. And in the center of that mold, as you'll see shortly, is a hole through which the metal is poured. Now, for this example, this brooch is made in a metal called pewter, which is an alloy of different metals, tin and other metals combined with it. And this is molten pewter in a melting pot. It melts about 300 degrees with a ladle in to skim out the pewter to put in the molding machine. But I thought it was interesting, you'll see there in the center of the ladle, and particularly to the right-hand side, what we call dross, the impurities. When you heat any metal, the impurities rise to the top, and they're first then with the ladle skimmed off to give you the purified metal, which is then poured into the mold. And this is another great scriptural example. It talks about us being refined, but that is a subject for another day. That molten pewter is then poured into the top of, this is a centrifugal casting machine, So the mold is inside this machine, being spun round at speed, and the metal is poured into the mold. So it goes into all the crevices, the indentations in the mold, and fills them all. And when you lift the lid after pouring the metal, this is what you see. So this is the mold inside the machine. And there in the center, you see through the hole in the center of the mold, the caster has poured sufficient metal to fill what is in the mold and then allow it to come out of the top. And then very quickly, that sets, and you can lift the top part of the mold off from the bottom part. And this is what you get. So this is the metal coming out the center of that mold. The big clump in the center hole where the metal is poured in, the sprues or the feeds that go into the different items round the outside of the mold. And so going back to the particular item that we are looking at, you then have this, the original on the left-hand side, and an express image, a perfect copy of that original on the right-hand side. It feels like the original. It looks like the original. We've put joints, catching pins on the back, so they're both usable in the same way. But it isn't the original. It's an express copy, an express image of the original. And at the time that this was written in Hebrews, it was something that they were very familiar with, seeing craftspeople and artisans producing things from molds, and understood what this Greek word character meant, that something which had the character of the original was like the original. It was like looking at the original, but it isn't the original. So this is where I hope that the jewelry process, explained there very briefly, might help to explain some of the background to this word. Hopefully that is helpful. Please put any notes in the comments section. And having understood that, it then helps us when we come to look at various different Bible passages. The fact that this Greek word character refers to the physical object making an impression. So in this example, that's the master pattern, the original, which is on the left. The act of striking or making, the molding process that we've looked at, and the thing that struck, the exact representation on the right-hand side. And from the original to the express image, and the whole process is encapsulated, as I say, in this word character. So then with that in mind, just to look at a couple of examples when we then come to consider Bible passages on the subject, hopefully using that knowledge to try to see what these passages are saying helps us in the understanding of them. So here we have in John chapter 14, Jesus saying in verse 9, "He that hath seen me hath seen the Father. Not because I am the Father, but because I am an express image of the Father." Looking at the original brooch and looking at the copy, it's like you're looking at the same thing. And in that way, Jesus is saying, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." Not because I'm the Father. He didn't claim to be the Father, but it was like looking at God. Why? Verse 10, "Because my words and my works, my deeds, are as my Father would do. I speak my Father's words. I act as my Father would act. To see and to hear me is like listening to my Father, because I am the express image of my Father." So Jesus isn't claiming to be God. He's claiming to be the image of God, carrying out the deeds and the works of God as the express image of him. And John chapter 1 makes that very clear when it tells us, "No man hath seen God." They'd seen Jesus. He stood before them, but no man had seen God. Rather, Jesus declared him. Jesus was this express image who demonstrated God. And again from John chapter 12, "He that seeth me seeth him that sent me." So looking on Jesus wasn't looking on God. It was looking on the express image of God. It was like looking on God because Jesus acted and spoke in the way that God would have him do, being completely obedient to God through his life. And again, Jesus acknowledges in John chapter 8 that these things were the things which he had heard of God. So those things which he heard of God were those things which he spoke. You, he tells them in verse 41, do the deeds of your father. You copy the ways of your forebears, those things which went against God. But I do the deeds and the words that I have heard of God. And in that way, on the express image of the God. And in John chapter 5, at the end of the chapter, at the bottom of the section there, we read, I can of mine own self do nothing, because he did what God showed and spoke to him. There's middle of verse 19, the Son can do nothing of himself, but what he seeth the Father do, and what things soever he doeth, these also doeth the Son likewise. And that's how, when Jesus was before them, it was like he was showing in this express image the character of God. Not, as I say, because he was God, but because in all points he showed what God would have done, what God told him were those words which he recounted. And there's a great hope in this for each of us, in that you'll see in one of the examples of the molds, there were multiple copies of the same thing. You have a master mold, which is making a one-off, and we then have production molds where if you want to make multiples of the same thing, you can do that. Jesus was out that master mold. He is the express image of God. This isn't Adam made in the image of God in Genesis chapter 1, another subject, but this is the express image, a totally different word, completely demonstrating in word and deed, as I've said, God. But Colossians chapter 1, God hath made us, delivered us, translated us, that we might have redemption. And how do we have that redemption? The end of verse 14, through the blood of Jesus. Jesus who, verse 15, is the image of the invisible God. So this is this express image again. But it then says, the firstborn of every creature. And this is where the great hope comes in for us. In Romans chapter 8, we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose, for whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. And Jesus, God, doesn't want Jesus to be a one-off, the only item that comes out of the production mold. He wants that production mold to then make a pattern to which we are by our lives conformed. We may not achieve it in this life because we're continually learning and seeking to follow after God. We constantly sin and do those things which are wrong. But by putting our faith and trust in God through the Lord Jesus Christ, his Son, his express image, we have this wonderful hope that just as he, because he lived a sinless life of complete obedience to God, was raised from the dead, so too we, his return, which is spoken of in many other titles in this series, might share that wonderful hope, whether dead or alive, of resurrection and judgment to life everlasting. That Jesus may not be a one-off, but rather the firstborn among many brethren. And the offer is there for each of us to be having our lives molded into that character which he expressed continually throughout his life. So thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions or comments about this video, then please post them in the comments section of the channel. And please don't forget to subscribe to the Gospel Online YouTube channel for more Bible study videos weekly, and press the notification button. Thank you.